So this week we're going to be looking at, it's not a particular theme. Last week we looked at a poem about peace. We were really feeling the rawness, not that we're not anymore, certainly feeling the rawness of this moment and how sort of helpless a lot of us feel and what wishing for peace looks like right now. And we looked at a poem by Yehuda, which is incredibly powerful, called Wild Peace. And this week we're taking a little bit of a different turn. We're continuing to look at poets who have been incredibly impactful in Israel's history and the Jewish tradition of poetry and literature. This week we're taking a look at Uri Tzvi Greenberg, who was a 19th, 20th century poet who wrote in both Hebrew and Yiddish. His poetry contains a lot of messianic themes because he comes from a very traditional background. He was born into a Hasidic family in Austria-Hungary and had a very traditional Jewish upbringing. It infuses a lot of his work. And he witnessed a lot of violence against his own family, against the Jewish people when he was living where he was living. He ended up immigrating to Israel in the early 1920s. And all of everything, so as our life experience informs our worldview, his life experience really informed his worldview. And his ideology can be a little controversial. He was a proponent of a particular brand of Zionism that wasn't the mainstream brand. And he really believed in a more kind of particularist approach. He was very much about the greatness of what we can be as a people and who we can be as individuals and who we were meant to be. And because he wrote the most incredible poetry from this place of believing in greatness and in our possible greatness. And so this poem that's really going to take up much of our evening tonight is called The Song of the Great Mind, Shir HaSechel HaGadol. And we're going to take a look at this, go through it much like we did last week, look at some Jewish texts that might inform the way we read this, and some Jewish texts that are explicitly referenced in his poem. And I'd love if we could just take a read through before we go piece by piece, which we're going to do a read through much like we did last week. So if anyone is willing to read for us, just the poem all the way through so we have a sense of it. If there are any volunteers, if someone could read.
I can.
Great.
That mind, the small one, is soft like a pullet. It is afraid of space and it loathes the dimensions of the sea. It is a forest firefly at night, a tavern splinter of light in the meadow night. To the eyes of the carter, who sluggishly drives horse and cart through the dust and yawns, such is that mind, the small, the poor one, that serves the peddler on daily rounds, and that twistedly scorns visions of glory. It goes through our streets near the low roofs, licking the moss of days, drinking from drain pipes, seeing in every cur a kind of wolf or tiger. That mind, the great one, the one winged with light, the supreme ruler, the high king. From the time that the people inhabited their lands and waters, and the king from his throne beheld the mountains of Moab, is not here. It sits in its nest forgotten, but it lives. I sing to my people, remember the eagle, bid it come and it will come, to show you the place of passage that leads from here, the swamp of dream, to the meaning. So poor are we without, so twisted of shape, so shorn of glory, not so within the body, which is more deep than its bodily dimensions. In it hidden lie, as in a locked palace, all kinds of marvelous and precious things, until the tall and wide gate of the heart is broken through by the gatebreaker blowing a ram's horn. Towards that day I sing, and in the hearts of our generation, in every song, I stir up the strife of longing. My every syllable cuts. I catch each traitor, though disguised. I strip the person bare who teaches us to be as a reed to the river. So poor without, such mighty lords within. Mighty like the mountains of Lebanon, eternal like Mount Hermon in its snows. And that sundering in the middle, Amen I sing, the day on which the miraculous line of the race which Titus rent into will be joined.
Okay. This is a packed poem, and I know upon first reading it, there's so much to unpack. It may not make complete or even any sense to you as you're reading it. There's a lot in here. We're really going to pick it apart and understand it. But I'd love to hear if there are any initial reactions to this poem, to the language. Sheila, I see you talking, but I think you're muted.
I did the wrong thing. Okay. The references to the Bible, we were talking about this at lunch.
Yes.
That it's like he's reminding, it's like the Midrash where there have constant references to the Bible to remind you, you know, what's going on, what went on, and it's not much different now. But you have to know your history because he's talking, about the Ethiopian, what do you call him? The Exodus from Ethiopia, the magic carpet from the Ethiopians. I forgot what it's called. If you push it up, I can probably find.
Is it towards the bottom?
No, I think it was in the middle somewhere.
Middle?
I don't know. To me, it was a reminder of the Ethiopian.
The eagle. Are you talking about the eagle?
The what?
Are you talking about the eagle?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
The word eagle, I think, was used in taking the Ethiopians out.
It was from Yemen.
Oh, that was from Yemen? Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a reference that only we old people remember.
And right, that's the beauty. We talked, for those of you who weren't here last week, the beauty of poetry, part of the beauty of poetry is that it includes so many references, whether or not you initially realize it. It is, the words are chosen so intentionally to invoke a certain style, a certain person, a certain incident. And it's just layered, much like the Torah, the Talmud, the Midrash is layered with references. And so even within this, you'll be able to point out references that I'm not even aware of. And it's just all the fuller because of it. Ruth?
In the first section, I think he talks about the shtetl, that, what is it? The Carter, the Kisam Beit HaMozeg, like the tavern owner, and the houses that are low. To me, it looks like the shtetl.
It's so interesting, and I really want to think about this imagery here of. There's a lot of it, of the Carter. We're going to go through this piece by piece to really look at it, but the tavern, the Carter, a little lower down, we have the peddler, and the low roofs and the drain pipes and this sort of confined existence. I think that's a lot of what's being got at here. It's a confined existence.
Of space.
Let's start. Look at the top, because that's right at the top and it's such a brilliant line. Okay, so that mind, the small one, is soft like a pullet. And a pullet here, just to get so that we all know what the words are that we're talking about. What are we talking about?
Can you do something? Can you adjust your microphone?
Can you hear me?
Barely. It's very soft.
I have no microphone. I'm just speaking into thin air. But I think it's meant to be catching me somewhere. I don't really know how this normally works. Is there normally a microphone up here?
Yeah, there's mics in the ceiling. It's just about.
Yell. Can you hear
Now
me?
I hear him.
Can you hear me if
Yep.
I speak?
I
Rabbi-
hear him better than
Rabbi
I hear
Alex,
Yes.
it might be the female versus the male voice, but
It
if
is.
it's okay, if you go sit closer to your beshert, then maybe it'll be okay.
You see, closer to me.
Or switch
I'll speak
seats.
loudly and I'll try to lower my
It's
register.
still, I think
There's
the
a-
point is you're
Where the
too
mics
far
are.
away.
There's really nothing to be close to though.
Yeah, I think it's all in the ceiling.
It's the ceiling.
So switch seats with him.
Maybe we need to.
Okay, we'll do a
Switch
quick
seats
test.
with
Quick test.
Rabbi Jacobs,
Okay.
and let's try that.
Can you hear me from here?
Yes.
Oh, it's the echo, by the way. That's what it is. Okay, let me take this in. Yes.
Sorry to move you, but
No, you're right. There's an echo here that helps. So that's what it is.
and that's what I
Okay.
think we need to remember for our Saturday class for the other
That is
classes.
helpful. Okay, so
Yeah,
that mind,
perfect.
the small one, okay, that mind, the small one is soft like a pullet. And here it's a frolach rafes. We're talking about a small chick, and rafes here is it's weak. It's a weak, sort of feeble young hen, young chick. And so that small one, that small mind, right? We're always talking about the mind in this analogy. The mind that is small is sort of that soft, weak baby hen. And it is afraid of space, and it loathes the dimensions of the sea. Okay, who was talking? Ruth, are you the one who mentioned this? Who mentioned, who brought this up about afraid of space? Maybe it was Sheila. I cannot remember.
I think it was Ruth.
Ruth. So the mind being afraid of space and loathing the dimensions of the sea. It is a forest firefly at night, a tavern splinter of light in the meadow night to the eyes of the carter. So what's that? How are we understanding that here? It's this, anyone have an idea what we're talking about here?
Well, I have my own idea.
Please.
It's very emotional and very physically emotional.
Yes.
And there's a lot of light and dark, and the firefly and the splinter of light
Yes.
is letting in lightness where the mind that's afraid of space is very dark in the dimension. And there's a real contrast there. And then it goes on with the sluggishness. It's just, it just reminds me of, I don't want to say grief because it's not grief, but just like really internalizing your emotions. I feel like that's a small thing.
Right. No, that's exactly it, right? We're trying to get at this concept of smallness, of a small mind. And so part of that is understanding this sort of internalized darkness here. And I think when I read this part, I think, so it's the carter, the person who that's their job. They're a carter, and they see a splinter of light. They're zeroed in on their immediate needs and desires, right?
But there's hope.
But there's hope. But we're getting at smallness. We're trying to understand what this is saying about what the small mind is, right? The small mind. The small mind sees the sliver of light. You see, exactly what of the tavern. That's all you see.
Oh,
And then we'll keep reading here because we're still trying to understand the small mind. Yeah.
I was wondering, what is the small mind? Is it someone that's not very learned, or is it somebody that is, I don't know, not worldly?
Right. So this is a good question. What is the small mind? Is it someone, Rachel said, who's not learned, and we're getting these images of, right, the shtetl and of the carter and of the peddler and these.
The small mind, it seems like somebody who's hardworking, because the carter and the peddler, they sluggishly drive their horse and cart. I think they're sluggish because their work is so hard, and they
Yes.
are constantly doing it through the dust and the.
It's
his
weird.
daily rounds, yeah,
It's
yeah,
weary.
weary.
I think this is really important to point out, because I don't think this is about being intellectually inferior or anything of the sort. I think this is talking about a sort of confined state of
And
being.
maybe I'm seeing in every cur kind of a wolf or a tiger, so it looks small, but it's pretty mighty.
So, but this is really interesting here. So that second stanza here, such is the mind, the small one, the poor mind, the impoverished mind, right? We're not talking about poverty. We're talking about an impoverished mind, which is, it's different things. We're using this image of poverty and hard work and kind of being oppressed and not having the freedom to think bigger. We're using that to understand what makes for smallness. And we're saying here, this is a person who goes through the streets near the low roofs, licking the moss of days, drinking from drain pipes, seeing in every cur, a cur here is a dog, that's in the Hebrew, kalev, seeing in every dog a kind of wolf or tiger.
So there's something mighty.
Seeing behol kalev katan, that's in the Hebrew, kalev katan, seeing in every small dog a wolf or a tiger. So what does that say about what the small mind is?
It thinks bigger. And what's,
Well,
Is it,
Or
so
is
it's,
it-
yeah,
is it fear? So they see in every dog, I mean,
yeah.
is it a dog or is it a wolf or a tiger? Is it just a little dog? And
Right.
actually, I'm also wondering if it's maybe a play on word, so bechol kelev, so in every dog, but maybe it's kelev, like the heart.
Mhm. The whole kalev, so in every, so, okay,
It's stretching it, but maybe.
I mean,
It's
we,
Caleb, it's
I
Caleb.
know, but I wonder if there's a play on words.
I don't know. I still look at the shtetl. Those years, some Jews really, really didn't like dogs. And they were afraid of dogs. They seemed to them
sure,
like wolves or,
Yeah.
yeah. I
So-
still see shtetl.
yes,
I'd like to, can I say something?
yes,
Sure.
please.
So I joined this just because I wanted to be a part of something that you were doing, Alex.
Oh, thank you.
And I don't usually feel like I have any talent to understand anything about poetry, but I love the line, it's a forest firefly at night. And I can't help but keep going back to that because a firefly, if it's in front of you, is so easy to see. It's so bright. It's eye-catching. But you put it in a forest, and how can it be seen? It's impossible to be seen even at night in the midst of a forest. So the idea that there's so much potential in it and so much brightness, but in the circumstance, it can't be appreciated. And that seems to carry through to the other, the cur being a wolf or a tiger. It has all this potential, but maybe the circumstances prevent it from achieving its potential or being seen.
Yes. And I think that goes back to, I mean, if we're thinking about circumstances, that's a lot of what's happening in this first paragraph here, that the circumstances around these people, the job of the carter, the job of the peddler, this sort of, this weight that they're carrying prevents, a larger mind, a big mind. And of course, right, this forest firefly, it is beautiful, beautiful imagery here at night. So this bright spot, so beautiful, Patty, this bright spot of light that's contained in all this vastness. One, there are a couple of things here that, the forest firefly, that's light that draws you in to a particular small spot, right? You're drawn in there. And then there's all of this other space that is totally invisible to you because of it. So it's both of those things. It's both, how can you see that little dot of light with that circumstance? And also, you can't see the forest, when you only exactly forest through the trees.
And that ties together to being afraid of space and the dimensions of the sea. The sea is just, endless.
Yes.
Huge.
This,
That gives you something really, a focus.
yes. Yeah, right. So and I think there's this focus, that's very, so if we're thinking about focus, that is a theme in this first paragraph too, that everyone is looking for focus. We're looking for this forest, it's a forest firefly at night, this small mind. It's a tavern splinter of light in the night. It's this, the drinking the water from the drain pipes. We're looking for these little things to latch onto, to hold onto. We cannot see the bigger picture here. And then
But
this
yes, the tavern also, like you imagine the tavern is full of life. And you just see this splinter of light and you can't appreciate all that's going on in that tavern.
That's
Right?
true. Yes, absolutely. Right. Everything that comes with the word tavern, there's this whole association of joy and celebration and warmth that you can only see it from afar. You can only sense what that must be like. Absolutely. And then we come down to the very last line, which it's so beautiful. When I first read this, I didn't see potential in that line. I didn't see, that you could see in a dog, the potential to be a wolf or tiger as something mighty and wonderful. I saw that as fear as well. But I think that's sort of it's a cool thing to hold both of those, because poetry, of course, there is no one meaning. There are many, many meanings and many possible ways of reading this poem. But if we were to stick with fear, because I do think that's one way to read this and one way to understand a small mind, right? A small mind is one that you see a small dog and you see danger, you see fear wherever you look. You see you're in a place of desperation and need, and you're going and drinking from drain pipes and everything is scary. And I wanted just for a moment, take a look at at a text that we talk about a lot when we talk about fear. And it's actually on the last page. It's from Bamidbar. It's the story of the spies who go scout out Israel, right? They're instructed by Moses to go scout out the land of Israel and bring back a report, right? Let us know how this country is. Let us know what we are to look forward to, how we should prepare. And here is what we get. Will anyone read this for us? Go for it.
Which one is it?
We're on Numbers 13.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's the right one.
30. Sorry, Ed wrote that.
This is what they told Moses. We came to the land you sent us to. It does indeed flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who inhabit the country are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the Anakites there. The Amalekites dwell in the Negev region. Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites inhabit the hill country, and Canaanites dwell by the sea along the Jordan. Keep going.
Yeah.
Caleb hushed the people before Moses and said, let us by all means go up, and we shall gain possession of it, for we shall surely overcome it. But the other men who had gone up with him said, we cannot attack that people, for it is stronger than we. Thus they spread, what is that word?
Oh, so it's deba. So we're talking about like bad reports.
Pardon me?
We're talking about bad reports.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I knew the story was among the Israelites about the land that they had scouted, saying, the country that we traversed and scouted is one that devours its settlers. All the people that we saw in it are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The Anakites are part of the Nephilim, and we looked like grasshoppers to ourselves. And so we must have looked to them.
Okay. So this is a classic story of fear overcoming us, right? We talk about this story, we talk about Joshua and Caleb being the two sort of righteous spies who came at this situation with hope, who saw all of the good and all of the promise in this land. And then you have the other 10 spies who said, they're too mighty for us. There are too many people. They're too mighty. We look like grasshoppers to ourselves. And so we must have looked to them, right? We look like grasshoppers to ourselves. And it's this fear mentality that prevents us from moving forward in that time, and we end up sorely punished for this. Fear prevents our progress. Fear makes us wander for many, many more years. And looking like grasshoppers to ourselves, when we see ourselves as small, when we see ourselves, our minds, our potential as small, and we imagine that's how others see us, it's a self-actual, what's that called? Self-actualizing. That's what it is.
Fulfilling.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Exactly. Thank you. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so this is sort of our classic central text on fear and living in a fear mentality and being overrun by this fear and the way that contains us and constricts us and limits us. And so we go back, I don't know if anyone has any response to that, and to that text and how that informs our understanding of the small mind, the fear, influence mind. Yes? Sorry, go ahead.
My feeling on it is, it's all perspective and reality. And we can self-degrade and still be brilliant, but because we don't have the faith in ourselves, we think others look down on us like that as well. And I think it's kind of the same thing. We look like grasshoppers. Well, a grasshopper can be mighty and, do great things and fly and has like this incredible vision, but it's small.
Yeah.
And so it's all in perspective. To an ant, a grasshopper is huge.
It's true. I love that perspective because we really don't ever think about why are we belittling the grasshopper in this moment? The grasshopper has its own might and its own prowess, and we look at grasshoppers like
they're
small.
incredible. They're just little.
I love that. That's a really wonderful way to break open that text.
Like the fight.
Josh?
Just
Right.
one line from the poem I love is licking the moss of days.
Yes.
But the spies come back with giant bundles of grapes and like, here's how great the land is, and here's this giant fruit. But no, that's not for us. Like we eat moss. You know what I mean? Like
Moss.
like here are all these grapes and all this fruit. That's for the giants that live there. Because the spies ultimately say we shouldn't go take the land.
Right.
So it's being content with the moss, like as opposed to the big grapes. Like this being satisfied with smallness.
Yeah.
Like let the giants have the good land and the bounty. We're satisfied with the moss of days.
Yeah. Or another
The
word.
drain pipe water,
And
not the.
yes.
Line, not the.
Right,
that's why
right.
for the drain pipe water.
Yeah.
Right, or the milk and honey, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's so wonderful, right? The drain pipes, also such a powerful line. Drinking from drain pipes, going through walking the streets near the low roofs. And if that's what we become accustomed to and we say, we're just trying to get by, right? That's all we need. We just need to get by rather than we need to thrive, right? I think there's that too. That's part of what we're saying here is that there's the low mind is one that finds existing to be enough. And our question is it? Yes, Josh.
Also, just going back to what my mom was talking about with the firefly.
Yeah.
Making me think of like this great bright light that's trapped in a small body. And that's sort of the small mind. Right? That he's saying there is a great mind trapped in there, and maybe that's the light.
Yeah.
Firefly. Small mind is that little bug body that we're like trapping our light in and not allowing it to.
Yes. Right. And that's a through line of this poem, and which we'll see more when we talk about the great mind, because we've been talking so much about what the impoverished mind is. What is the small mind? And the great mind isn't something that we don't have. That's a big point in this poem, is that it lives within us like this light. And we need to call it out like the eagle, which we'll get to that part, but that this great mind is lying dormant within us. So let's take a look at the great mind. So that next part, let me go up here for you all. Okay, that mind, the great one, the one winged with light, the supreme ruler, the high king. From the time the people inhabited their lands and waters, and the king from his throne beheld the mountains of Moab, is not here. It sits in its nest forgotten. So there's something happening here immediately. We've been talking about this sort of shtetl image, the confined space, the low space of the shtetl, the peddler, the carter, that being the low mind, where the low mind lives. And here the great mind lives with analogies of high office and sovereignty and this ability to see everything, the mountains of Moab, and to assume its power.
But they're saying that's not here.
Yes. So what do we make of that? That mind is not here.
So that mind's either somewhere else or a different mind is here.
Right. That mind sits in its nest forgotten, but it lives. And then we're saying, I sing to my people, remember the eagle, bid it come and it will come. The nest, it's sitting in its nest. And we're saying we're bidding it come to show you the place of passage that leads from here, the swamp of dream, to the meaning. So let's take this stanza here and ask ourselves, what is the great mind? We've sort of explored what the small mind is. What is the great mind?
I don't think it's necessarily intellectual. I think it's somebody that's like open and willing to let things in.
Yeah. There's an
Kind of
experience.
interesting that the image of the one winged with light. So the whole first stanza was about light being in the center and surrounded by darkness. And here the light is the outside and kind of giving lift to this creature, you know, if you
Yes.
have wings if you're winged by light, it's on the outside and it's being seen, maybe.
That's so beautiful, right? We talked about this trapped light. The small mind is the trapped light. And the large mind, the great mind is enthroned in light. It's winged in light and wings, right? That's beautiful. This image that lifts rather than it's a freeing image.
And it transcends. If the firefly in the forest, it's not going to rise above the trees, but this winged light can rise above and come out of what it's being hidden by.
That's beautiful. So right, that firefly lives in the darkness, lives in the forest, is sort of, it brings light to dark places, but it never rises above. That's its dwelling place, that forest, that darkness, right? Exactly. But the bird, the one winged with light can rise above, can be this eagle. Tybal.
Well, the thing about poetry is sometimes people's minds go other places. And for this, when we switched from small to great, and given that it's Hebrew poetry, so when it's Hebrew, it's always alluding to biblical text, I started thinking of sun and moon, which isn't so much a dichotomy of the two different kinds of light, and the idea that it doesn't necessarily have to be a dichotomy.
So that's wonderful, right? We're in the book of Bereshit. We're in Genesis. We've been talking about our creation story. And there are lots of midrashim around the luminaries. We have two major luminaries. We have the big one, the sun, and the small one, the moon. And we have these stories about how the big one came to be the big one, how the small one got relegated to that place, the sort of, battles that they had, the ways one felt slighted. And they're both beacons of light, both of them. They're just, it doesn't have to be a binary. It's true. They exist together. They you know, the moon reflects the light of the sun. If we think about it that way, they really do complement each other. And here the poem is very clear that the great mind exists within us, even if we're exhibiting the small mind. It's not somewhere else. It's not within someone else. It's within us. And so there is some relation maybe between the two and not this binary.
Is there something, this is completely different direction, but some reference to like exile and being exiled from the temple? Because there's
Yes.
the time that people inhabited the lands and waters, and then,
Yes.
but it's not here. You know, we're
Okay.
yearning for Jerusalem, we're yearning for the temple.
This is so important to understanding this poet, right? This poet is a real Messianic Jew. He believes in the greatness of the age of our kings and our kingdom, the kingdom of David. And we see that here, right? The time, if the great mind is not here, which it's saying, the great mind is not here. When was the great mind here? When was the great mind here, according to our poet?
What year did you say he was?
He is late 19th century, 20th century. And here we're seeing in this stanza, we see where he thinks the great mind was. It's this biblical time here, this time of the ancient kingdom, when we inhabited this land and saw the mountains of Moab and had sovereignty and this, you know, he really believes in this age and then this age returning in messianic times. He is really a big proponent of that. Tybal?
So I was trying to figure out, and I couldn't get to Tanakh quickly enough. But to me, this has to be United Kingdom. So there are really only 3 or 4 possibilities. Well, 3, because it was more divided. So it's either Saul, David, or Solomon.
Yeah, right. His time of the great mind is certainly not when the northern and southern kingdoms were divided. He's looking for a united kingdom and a time of one sort of king over ruling all of us, who communicates with God, you know, a righteous king. And this place of expanse, I think that's important here, right? We were looking at the confined place with the small mind, and this, you know, whether the language of sovereignty works for you or doesn't work for you, what he's getting at is a place of you know, being elevated and seeing everything, being able to assume your power. That is what is being said here. But it's not here anymore. He's living in a time and maybe he sees a lot of unrealized potential in the way people think and act. And he says that mind is not here. It sits in its nest forgotten. It sits in its nest forgotten, but it lives. And we just have to bid it come. We just have to bid this eagle come, right? We have to think where we were saying that there's maybe a reference to Yemenite Jewry and the way we expand our minds to think about what's possible, what we can do, how we can bring about salvation for people in need, people in desperation, that we have a lot of power and we can use it. We can use it for good. And so that's possibly what's being referenced here. But this image of freedom and to bid the eagle come, bid the great mind come, just ask that it come to show you the place of passage that leads from here, the swamp of dream, to the meaning. Let's try to unpack that. What is the swamp of dream?
I wonder if he's talking to the people about the people in Europe dreaming about Eretz Israel,
Mm.
not doing anything. But
Ah.
he said, there is a bridge, you can get there.
So living in, yes, I mean, and that's a big part of his history, him seeing, him living in Europe and thinking that he belonged there and that was his home. And then he saw incredible violence, he witnessed pogroms, and he said, this is not a place that's safe for us anymore. And he became a very staunch Zionist and moved to Israel. And so maybe this is, living in the place of the swamp of dream, right? It's this weird, it seems like a contradiction because dream doesn't have bad connotations, right? This dream, the dream of Israel, the dream, the dreams that we want to bring to fruition. But then the swamp, it's where things get stuck.
It's not like the yellow brick road. You have to get through the poppies.
Yes.
Sorry for that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You're a whiz.
Yeah.
I am a whiz. But dreams are not always clear. You have to like work your way through them.
Right. You have to, right. And what he's saying is you need a great mind for that. Maybe you need an expansive mind, not a small mind, to be able to wade through that swamp of dreams and to find the path to their fruition, to meaning, to actualizing them.
What is, in Hebrew, what is the last word? El ha-pesher?
Pesher. So
So is pesher really meaning?
yeah,
Is
meaning or
there-
intent.
But is there like shara is a compromise? So is there some?
Oh. Well, that's very interesting.
No.
So, right, this is where Hebrew, and let's see where our Hebrew speakers.
I was gonna go look it up.
There she goes.
Pesher, right, pesher, when you look it up, it means meaning or intent. But of course, the root it fills in so many different kinds of words in all of its different iterations. And so compromise, right? So that's interesting. To the place
It's
of
interesting
compromise.
because the plan words too, the nesher, the eagle and the gesher, the bridge, and then
Yes,
pesher is.
right.
I know it's the meaning, but I wonder if there is something more than just the meaning.
You mean in the rhyme?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rhyme is interesting, but I wonder if I'm sure
Yes.
there could have been another word that besides the rhyme that could have been for meaning.
It's the dictionary.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
Pesher is meaning, explanation, interpretation, and solution.
Solution. So those are all really great ways to understand this. Each one a little different, right? So dream, the swamp of dream is sort of this place of, it's an idea. It's not so defined. Maybe it's, it's stuck, and and we're saying the place of pesher is this place of more definition, of interpretation, of it being sort of fleshed out a little differently. I don't know. How are people understanding this? The dichotomy.
They're stuck in Europe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Israel, and there is a way to find, there is a passage to go into the solution.
Yeah. So the
Go
swamp
to,
of,
go
yeah.
to Palestine, go to Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not just a pipe dream. You still have to work your way through the dream.
Sure.
Mhm.
Sure.
It's not-
So, right, you need right? It's not just, so the swamp of dream will turn to pesher. There's a passage here, right? That's important. And it's not just that suddenly your dream becomes the reality.
Nobody's
A
gonna.
place of passage that leads from here, the swamp of dream, to the meaning. There is a passage, there is a process to get from one to the other. Absolutely. Okay, let's keep reading here. So poor are we, let's see, yes, we're down here. So poor are we without, right? And milavar, from the outside, not without, but like from the outside, externally. So poor are we, so impoverished are we, So twisted of shape, so shorn of glory, not so within the body, which is more deep than its bodily dimensions. In it lie, as in a locked palace, all kinds of marvelous and precious things, until the tall and wide gate of the heart is broken through by the gatebreaker, blowing a ram's horn. Let's take that, just that piece. So poor are we without. So on the outside, we are these shapes. We're these twisted shapes. We're this limited being, right? Our bodies can be limited in so many ways. And it's saying beneath the body, within the body is infinity, right? Within the body, there is infinite potential and all of these precious things and marvelous things to unpack that you can't see from the outside. And we convince ourselves sometimes that this is all we are. I am the sum of my parts, right? I am just a body, and all I can do in this world is what my body can do in this world. And it's saying, no, no, that is the small mind. So what are we saying about the body? What is our poet saying about the body?
There are physical limitations,
Mm.
but internally, there's just so much more.
What are the marvelous
You know,
and precious things?
You know, the mind.
It's hidden lie as in a locked palace.
Bible?
It's actually a question for you, Rabbi Alex.
Okay.
I can't really see your face. I'm going to try to see your face.
Yeah.
So this use of heart in the context of so many biblical allusions, are we supposed to think that it's heart as the rabbis understood it, which is heart, mind, and soul, or heart as it would be in the I can't think of the word, the time it was when the poet wrote it?
Okay, wait. Which reference to heart are we looking at here?
The
Or the
tall
shofar.
Until the tall and wide gate of the heart, because gate is so
Oh,
interesting.
gate of the heart. Gate of the heart. I see. Okay. So that is a very good question, right?
That's why I asked you rather than
So-
opining.
Yes, I have lots of thoughts about this word. Let me just see in the Hebrew and make sure.
It's lev in the Hebrew, isn't it?
So it's adeh. Okay, I've got shar, lev, gadol. So, okay. Lev in biblical Hebrew means both heart and mind, right? It's the seat of intellect, lev. We think of it as heart and love, and all of those things are still true. But biblically, lev is very much about thought and intellect. And I would say that our poet is familiar with that, right? Uri Tzvi Greenberg was born into a Hasidic family, raised traditionally. He knows what this word means. And when we're talking about a gate, right, sha'ar, we're accessing the imagery that's all over our liturgy. We're accessing imagery in our Psalms. So I do think that it's probably a more complex understanding of lev, of heart. And especially if we're talking about, the song of the great mind, right? Of course, here, the title is sechel. We're talking about sechel when we're talking about mind, which is also a particular understanding of mind. Yeah.
He's talking about the gate and the ram's hall, and there's that
Yeah.
share, during
Yes.
the shar.
Yes.
Mhm.
And the ram's horn, so it's again an illusion.
Yes. It's such a beautiful one, because when we talk about that, when we talk about the ram's horn and what it's meant to do for us and what it's meant to pierce and how it's meant to reach us and God, right? It's it's meant to expand us. It's meant to break down our walls, right? The walls that we built to confine us. And so it's really powerful liturgical imagery that should help us access that. And Josh?
Well, just thinking also like of the shofar as a wake-up call, going back to the
Mhm.
sleepiness of the peddler in the beginning.
Yes.
Sort of like just long day, tired, whole day of working and just wanting to get to the tavern kind of thing, like yawning, kind of moving towards this like little light in the distance of the tavern. Like that's what a nice goal would be, just to be able to get to a tavern at the end of a long day. Versus like wake up to, you have so much more potential than that, and your dreams can be so much bigger than that.
Yes. Yes. Okay. The second part of this text, the last couple of lines there of that stanza. Towards that day I sing, and in the hearts of our generation, in every song, I stir up the strife of longing, my every syllable cuts. I catch each traitor, though disguised. I strip the person bare who teaches us to be as a reed to the river. Okay, so towards this day, when, you know, the gate breaker, who also, we didn't talk about who the gate breaker is. Who is that? Who's that meant to be? Right? Until the tall, wide gate of the heart is broken through by the gate breaker, blowing the ram's horn. Who is the gate breaker?
Mashiach.
Mashiach, right? Is it Mashiach? This is it's a messianic, this is a poet who has a lot of messianic themes throughout his text, so it's very, very possible that this is the Mashiach. Who else? What else might it be, Tybal?
Whoever blows the horn during Elul.
So maybe it's anyone who could possibly wake you up, anyone who could break you from those patterns, that confinement. I thought maybe even we're meant to be our own gate breakers. I think that's a possibility here too. So all of those, very true. And towards the day, this is the poet saying, I sing, I'm hoping for this day. I'm wishing for this day, dreaming of this day. And he's trying to stir up longing in us for that day, right? So he says, I stir up the strife of longing. My every syllable cuts, and he catches each, this line really gets me. When I catch each traitor, though disguised, I strip the person bare who teaches us to be as a reed to the river. I catch each traitor, though disguised, right? Who's the traitor?
A naysayer, somebody who's gonna chalk you down the other way. Because a reed to the river, just kind of grows there. There's really there's no purpose other than, what does it do? Hold the river back, hold the water back?
What is your, right,
It's
what's,
very flexible.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have a backbone.
right. You're just sort of swaying the river rules you. You're a tiny thing in this grand body of water. You're taught, who teaches us, right? The traitor is the person who teaches us to be small and to bend to the will of everyone, to the river. And so I think it's true that in our lives, you know, having a small mind, the way he's understanding a small mind, that's part of just living in this world, right? I think all of us fall into the trap of living with a small mind, of, you know, doing what we need to do to get through the day, of, you know, being the carter, being the, you know, I just want my tavern. I just want that light. I'm tired. I just want some water. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's drain pipe water. I'm thirsty and tired and I'm scared and we live in fear. And that's so much of this world. It's so much of this world and so many people and, you know, people, organizations, whatever it might be, teach us to be small. Teach us that we are small, that we are, you know, how much can we really do to affect change in the world? How much can we really do, you know, as just, you know, individual people? And so he's really going against that. He's saying these traitors who teach you to be small. And then this last stanza here. So poor without, such mighty lords within. So impoverished, so poor, so constrained from the outside, such mighty lords within. Mighty like the mountains of Lebanon, eternal like Mount Hermon in its snows. Okay, so just that piece, because there's a lot of imagery here, a lot of biblical imagery that this is invoking. So mighty. We are almighty, our minds are almighty like the mountains of Lebanon, which are, you know, in our biblical texts, it's Lebanon, the cedar trees of Lebanon, the mountains of Lebanon are considered beautiful and mighty and big. And the temple, the ancient temple was made from the cedar trees of Lebanon. That was part of the material. It's the best of the best. And then eternal like Mount Hermon in its snows. I'm sure the Israeli folks here have some idea of what that's getting at. Anybody? What is that? Eternal like Mount Hermon, Har Hermon in its snows. Where do we go skiing in Israel?
Mount Hermon. Well,
Yeah.
you maybe.
Ruth?
Can you please scroll up? I don't see the last stanza.
Okay, it's this. Sorry. It's this last stanza here.
Okay.
Evyonim. Right. Adirim. Kavanan. No. Let's see, where are we? Adirim kavanan v'nitzchim kachermon b'shilko. So it's eternal like Mount Hermon in its snows. This is there's a text I included here. We don't actually have time to look at it, but it talks about sort of even biblically Mount Har Hermon has like 4 different names depending on who's ruling the land at the time. And it all talks about, it's all trying to speak the mightiness, the splendor of the land. And there's one name for Har Hermon, which means like mountain of snow and ice, because it's considered this cold, frigid place, like mighty snows. And you do go, if you want to ski in Israel, you go to Har Hermon. That is, you can ski there. And then, okay, this part, I really want to end here because it's where the poem ends and it's actually so powerful. And that sundering in the middle, that tear in the middle, Amen, I sing the day on which the miraculous line of the race which Titus rent in two will be joined. What are we talking about here? The tear in the middle, Amen, I sing the day on which the miraculous line, okay, who's Titus?
The Arch of Titus was the monument that was built in Rome to celebrate their sacking of the temple and bringing the temple's accoutrement. That's not the right word, but
yes,
full accoutrement.
All of the holy items, absolutely. Titus was the, emperor to be. He became the emperor of Rome, who destroyed the second temple. And he is all over rabbinic literature as this evil, evil man. I provided a text also in here, but we don't have time to look at it. It's just one of these sort of harrowing stories. I know we really don't have a lot of time and I don't want to keep you late, but this is one of those stories where, this horrible story of Titus going into the temple and blaspheming God by doing these unspeakable things in the Holy of Holies. And he does this thing where he takes a sword and cuts the curtain spreading between the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies, that curtain. And then there was a miracle which happened, which that blood issued forth from the curtain. in God's meeting place, in the temple. And Titus took that as a sign that he killed God. But that's not what happened. It's not what happened. It's just a sign that he made for himself. He saw this miracle, this curtain bleeding, and thought he had killed God. And so we have these stories of Titus all over the Talmud. He sent us into an exile. And here it's talking about this race which Titus went into. This race, this people, which Titus went into. And he rent us into in many ways, one of which is that there's this now exilic world, the people of exile and the people of Eretz Israel, right? You have the Babylonian Talmud, which will arise, and there's the people of Bavel and the culture and rabbinic tradition that flourishes in Bavel and the one that flourishes in Eretz Israel. And there's this connection, but also this divide that exists. And he's looking for this day when the two will be joined. This tear will be joined, will be mended. And so this is a poem that's telling us to be great, to access our power, to become a unified people, to dream big and actualize those dreams. And of course, this with his ideology, he wants us to work towards a messianic era where big things can happen. And he's upset at our smallness. He is upset at the way we limit ourselves when he knows we were made for so much more than this, when our minds are so much more capable. And we must only, he says, call for that eagle, right? Bid it come, and it will come. It's all just lying dormant within us. So thank you for looking at this poem with me today. I know I always have a million other texts I want to share with you, but it was a long poem and I really wanted to explore it with you. But there are so many beautiful texts that can help us read into it in different ways. We are actually not meeting next week. Next week, there is a little bit of a conflict. And so we will resume a week after. And I look forward to exploring a new poem with you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, Patty.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Isako.
Thanks, Alina.